Constitutional provisions. Some provisions have been made in our Constitution safeguarding the interests of such classes. Under Article 15, the state shall not discriminate against any citizen on grounds of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them. No citizen shall on ground only of religion, race, caste, sex, place of birth, or any of them be subject to any disability, liability, restriction, or condition with regard to access of shops, public restaurants, hotels, and places of public entertainment, or the use of wells, tanks, bathing ghats, roads, and places of public resort maintained wholly or partly out of state funds or dedicated to the use of general public. Their interests are safeguarded by providing them reservation in jobs. The 79th Amendment Act has reserved seats for them in Lok Sabha and state legislative assemblies. For safeguarding the interests of minorities, cultural and educational rights give minorities the freedom to preserve their language, script, and culture. They have the right to get education at the primary stage in their mother tongue. Educational institutions controlled by the state cannot discriminate against them at the time of giving admission. In granting aid to educational institutions, states cannot discriminate against any educational institution on the grounds that it is under the management of a minority, whether based on religion or language. In our country, a special body called National Commission for the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes has been constituted to look into all matters that relate to the measures that have been taken to protect the scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. Similarly, the Minority Commission has been set up to look into the problems of minorities and to solve them amicably. Untouchability. The word untouchability has not been defined in the Constitution, although it can be defined as the practice of separation followed by upper caste Hindus against lower castes. People belonging to this section of society were barred from education, using the same wells for drawing water and sharing the same food. In fact, even the shadow of the low caste was considered polluting. The upper caste believed that they will have to do penance and cleanse the pollution by observing some rituals. In other words, they will have to clean themselves by taking a purificatory bath in a holy river. People separated the vessels used by the lower castes for the same reason. Untouchability has manifested itself in various ways. They were not allowed to enter the temples and perform any rituals. They were prohibited from bathing in common ponds or from drawing water from wells. They were discriminated against in education and employment. They were offered food and tea in separate utensils. Moreover, they were forced to do menial jobs and unclean occupations. After independence, due to aforementioned constitutional provisions, members of the lower castes cannot be denied entry into any public institution. If people are found practicing untouchability, they could be punished by the Untouchability Offences Act 1955 and the Protection of Civil Rights Act 1955. It was essential because many such practices continue to flourish even today. As a result, caste rigidities have been reduced greatly. Nowadays, studying, traveling, working, dining, and even intercaste marriages have become common in all castes. Persons belonging to these classes are now heading many administrative departments and holding important government portfolios. Trivia. The International Day of the World's Indigenous Peoples is celebrated on August 9 each year to promote and protect the rights of the world's indigenous population. Trivia. The 1950 National Constitution of India legally abolishes the practice of untouchability, and there are constitutional reservations in both educational institutions and public services for untouchables. Manual scavenging. The practice of carrying human excreta in baskets by people over their heads is known as manual scavenging. The practice continued for centuries in the country until the flush system was evolved. On 23 October 1993, the National Human Rights Commission issued a letter to various authorities on the issue of elimination of manual scavenging. The Commission expressed its concern about the humiliating practice whereby millions of people collected night soil manually to earn a living. As this practice was an offense against human dignity, human rights activists condemned this practice and declared manual scavenging as negation of Dalits' dignity and rights. A national scheme of rehabilitation of scavengers and their dependents had been launched in 1992, but it failed. The Commission decided to write letters to all the state governments and central ministries to replace dry latrines in the buildings with pore flush ones. The Employment of Manual Scavengers and Construction of Dry Latrines Act 1993 prohibited the use of manual scavengers and punishes the employment of scavengers or the construction of dry latrines with imprisonment for up to 1 year or a fine of Rs 2,000. Offenders are also liable to prosecution under the Scheduled Castes and Scheduled Tribes Act 1989. Although the laws have been passed, the inability of the state government to provide an alternative employment has resulted in many people going back to old work. According to official estimates, more than 3 lakh people still carry night soil. This is the situation despite the fact that the law of 1993 provides for punishment if there is a dry latrine. The constitutional provision of raising the standard of living could not be possible as long as manual scavenging is carried out, as it was degrading and exposed people to several